I've been there, done that. Yeah. I've been there, done that. Yeah. I've been there, done that. And still learning.
All right, the big question today. Why do some teams do what's required while others do what's possible? Welcome to Been There, Done That, and Still Learning. I'm Matt Marcotte.
And I'm Kevin Ertel.
And today we are talking about one of the biggest differences between average organizations and extraordinary ones. Not strategy, not talent, not resources, but the word both of us love to use over and over again, commitment.
We love commitment,
We do love commitment.
We love commitment. And every leader wants committed employees, right? But the challenge is that all too often organizations actually, or accidentally, I guess I should say, create compliance instead. And you talk about this a lot, People will do what they're told. They hit the minimum standard, they follow the process, but they're not really, engaged in what's going on. And to me, there's this massive difference between people who work because they have to and people who work because they want to, and that they're really, bought in and excited about what the organization is really all about.
100%. So I want to share a story. I'll try and make
your stories.
What?
I love your stories. Story time.
Get your milk and you scrap a rug. We're going. All right. So I actually write about this in the book, but essentially last Christmas or 2 Christmases ago, I want to take my dad to dinner at this really, really nice restaurant in Boston. So, he's 90 years old. And so we made the reservation for 5:30 because he doesn't love an early reservation.
Senior special, yeah, sure.
I love it. Right. Anyway, so it was 5:30, 2 of us. Turns out he couldn't go. And so I had 2 friends that actually had been wanting to go to this restaurant as well. So I was like, well, let me see if we can get in the 3 of us, so one more person. So I called the restaurant and I got the host on the phone and I explained the situation that it was supposed to be 2 people. My father couldn't go, but do you have the ability to actually add one more person? So 3 versus 2. And without even hesitating, he just said, no. I was like, excellent. Thank you very much. And so at first I was going to be okay, and just take that as an answer. And then I thought, well, let me just ask one more question. So I said, by any chance, is there any other time tonight that you have available for 3 people? And without hesitation, again, he said, yeah, 8:30. I was like, couldn't you offer that up to me? And it was one of those moments where I was just like, okay, there's potential money on the table, so to speak. 2 people would have turned into 3 people. And clearly there was an opening, whether it just happened or not, that they didn't have someone at 8:30 and they could probably use that money. So I just thought to myself, this is such an example of compliance because he answered the question. He absolutely was compliant to the task. I asked the question, he gave me the answer, end of story. If he had been committed to me coming or anyone coming to the restaurant, then I would have thought he would have said, hey, I can't do 5:30, but if you have flexibility in the time you could come, I could sit 3 people at 8:30. The difference in that response would have changed how I felt about the restaurant, how excited I would have been about the experience, and how much I would have actually just been glowing and telling the story in a very different way than I'm telling it now, but that didn't happen.
Right, and even revenue they would have gotten. But
the number one thing, right?
Right, you'd think. What do you think, why do you think that happened?
It's funny, you and I have talked a lot about this over time for different things. And, I don't have a crystal ball. I wasn't in the room, but, I think back to, there's probably 3 big options that come to my mind. One is that he potentially was actually committed to the direction of the restaurant and therefore was doing a great job. Now, the reason I think that's probably not the case is I can't imagine any business or restaurant / business that would be okay with it doesn't matter if customers come. It's fine. We don't need the money, right?
You don't think?
Probably is not the answer. The second one is that the company had a vision, but they never explained it to him or didn't explain what his part of that was. And so therefore there was a miscommunication or a misalignment where there was interpretation or lack of clarity and alignment, right? So that's Number two. And number three could be that they were very clear about what their expectations are about customer experience and getting people in. And he just was like, not for me. And therefore, they didn't do a great job of making sure that they had employees who were committed to the same vision and doing the checks and balances you need to do to ensure that people are aligned and are committed. So, I mean, I think the second two probably are within the realm of reason, but who knows? Either way, his actions definitely made it a compliant experience versus a committed one. What do you think?
Right. Yeah, well, and even one of those is like maybe the hiring manager was also just compliant and just filling the role without really understanding the bigger picture.
But as a wise man who's run many organizations incredibly well, what do you think it was?
Oh, thank you. You flatter me.
Monday morning back.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big contributor to that problem that I've seen at a lot of companies is what I call the isolation trap. And it's when leadership's teams create a strategy behind closed doors and they kind of announce it out to the organization without really getting people bought in and involved in it. And that often leads to some pretty mediocre execution at best.
Yeah.
People will comply, as you talk about. They'll attend meetings, they'll complete the activities, but they're just not really invested, And you can compare that to organizations where employees help shape the plan. They're co-creating, they're involved, they contribute ideas. They understand the reasoning behind it because they were part of making it happen to begin with, so they find meaning in it. And they see themselves in how it all comes to life. And in that case, execution becomes dramatically stronger. And people will support what they help create. Now, that doesn't always tie down directly to the guy answering the phone for the reservations, in that he can't have everybody involved in the discussion and creating it, but you get a representative of that so that they all understand it. And when it comes to people like that, they really start to get it because people close to them have been part of it.
Yeah, and to your point, like you have to figure out how to cascade that belief and that commitment throughout an entire organization, whether you're sitting at the table as part of creation or the recipient of hopefully representation. So I agree with you. It's super important. Now, the question that I know we want to answer for people is, why does this matter, right?
Yeah.
Why does it matter if people are committed or compliant? And I think so many leaders have a kind of misunderstanding about what drives real performance, right? So people spend time on policies, procedures, compensation, incentives, accountability systems. Like all those things are important, right? There's not saying that you don't run or create the systems to be able to ensure that you're operationally able to scale your business. But that is like the secondary part, right? That's the vehicle to help commitment survive.
Yep.
And research consistently shows things like meaning, autonomy, connection, purpose are really the strongest drivers of engagement, right? And discretionary effort, meaning people will go above and beyond when they really understand why it matters and they believe it matters and they feel like they, as you said, have agency and a voice to make a difference, right? Versus being a cog in the wheel. And so, commitment, as I always say, is emotional before it's operational, because people commit to what they believe. And so much of this, I think it matters because if people start at the tactical level, they get tactical execution and tactical representation versus starting at the belief level where people are like, oh, I totally get it. I get why this is important. And now what can I do?
Yeah, I mean, because commitment is personal too. You feel it. You're involved in it. So a policy manual, well, it's helpful, not exactly inspiring usually.
Exactly. Really?
That can't be the end all be all. But I think, that is a thing. I do think organizations pay a huge price when they confuse compliance and commitment. And so many things are driven towards compliance, The policy manual is often about compliance, and it's missing the emotional component that really gets you all the nuance you need to get the benefits of commitment.
100%.
I think like compliance might get you consistency. You'll get the same thing everywhere, but commitment gets you innovation, and innovation doesn't always need to mean, some fancy new technical thing. It might be the innovation of that waiter or that guy that you called who's like, well, let me just tweak this a little bit and I'll find a way to
Yeah.
get you in. That's also innovation, and it delivers the
Yeah.
experience. Compliance will get you effort, maybe, at least get you people who are like, oh, I got to do this thing. It says I have to do this thing. But it doesn't really get you the energy that delivers the experience.
Yes.
For people,
Agreed.
right? Compliance gets people to do the core of their job. My job description says I do X, Y, Z. I'm doing X, Y, Z. But commitment, I think, gets you people to improve on the job. Like you might have a job description that says the basics, but it's the commitment that gets people to go like, let me really make this great because I understand what we're trying to deliver in the long run. And not only do I understand it, I believe in it, to use your words. And so if I believe in it, I'm going to maximize it. I think that's commitment.
100%. 100%. I agree with that.
I read your book and I really like it. So,
By the way, that was the most compliant sounding statement ever.
well,
All I had to say at 12 minutes into this podcast, I was supposed to say something nice about your book.
I remember what you put in the manual.
Of course, you're an operator. Love it. All right. So let's make it practical. Speaking of operations,
Yes.
let's talk about how do you know, or what might be some signs that you have a culture of compliance. So here's just a few things, and you tell me if you agree with them or not. First, people wait to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? They're just sitting there waiting for you to be like, oh yeah, go move that over there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Problems only get solved when a manager notices them. And so it's interesting. I always say compliance requires supervision and commitment creates partnership. And so that idea of compliance, in the way we're talking about it, requires someone telling you to go and do that, right? Employees do exactly what's expected and nothing more. And so going back to the story, now granted, once again, we don't know exactly the origin of kind of where it started, but in just the isolated incident, that employee answered the question, check.
Yeah, following procedure.
And stop.
The facts are the facts.
The facts are that's what you asked me.
Yeah.
What more do you want from me? Okay. Right? And then
if he'd actually asked that, it might have been good, but he didn't.
Can you imagine anything else? Yeah. What do you expect from me? Well, more than that. And then this one might be a little bit more quote unquote provocative, but the idea of you see people spending more time protecting themselves than improving the business. A lot of CYA that happens because there's almost like people know they're skating by. And so you look for ways and spend a lot of energy trying to make sure nobody knows that you're not doing more than you probably want to do.
Well, yeah, and honestly, by the way, if you've created a culture that's sort of driven by fear, that's going to drive exactly that behavior. And our current world of if we have a quick problem, let's solve it with a layoff is contributing to more of that.
Absolutely. So, to kind of summarize it, I think people, from a compliance perspective, people meet requirements, but they're not really investing themselves.
Yeah. And, kind of from a strategy perspective, compliance often sounds like, just tell us what you want, and
Totally.
And sometimes it doesn't sound that crappy. Sometimes it might be, yeah, great, just tell us what you want. It can sound like super cooperative.
Sound enthusiastic, right?
Yeah, it can sound that, but like anytime you sort of hear people say that, and I've been in those situations, what do you want us to do? What should we do? They're trying to be cooperative, but that's kind of revealing. It means they don't really feel ownership or really feel belief and part of trying to make it better. They're just waiting for direction, and committed organizations will sound a lot different than that. Leaders will start with why and give context to what they're doing, and they'll define what success looks like. Like we're successful when these things happen, and then teams can ask questions of themselves and of the leader, like, well, great, how can we make this even better? What am I missing? And that's ownership, and that's commitment. That's kind of what commitment gets you, I think.
Yeah. So why do you think leaders fall into the trap?
I think they fall into it for three reasons. One, control definitely seems efficient. Like just we got to get stuff done. I'm going to lay out what we got to get done, and it's efficient. We
Yeah.
can go there, and I don't have to mess with this, complicated emotional stuff. Just do it, right?
Yeah.
Kind of refer back to my past, but just do it does not mean that exactly.
Different
No,
interpretation.
yeah, a whole different story. Yeah, but I think maybe even it is sometimes faster just to tell people what to do. At least it's faster in the short term. Long term, I'm not so sure it's faster, but it might feel that way short term. Second, I think it's very easy to confuse alignment with agreement. If people nod, it sort of feels like they're committed, but they're not. They're just compliant. They're like, yes,
Yeah.
I got it. Yep, I'll do it. And that's not enough. And then, we kind of referenced this earlier before, but I think it can be very easy to be obsessed with process, where you're just like driving a process, and process oftentimes can be a problem. As much as I think process is as advantageous, if it gets so specific that it becomes sort of bureaucracy and people are just doing
Yeah.
it and following a process, then that's sort of a process without any kind of belief, and it's overly prescriptive. And if it's overly prescriptive, you're not getting all the benefits you get of commitment and people understanding the overall mission and just driving it, because you've
Yeah.
sort of over process them to the point that they almost don't have any option but compliance, because the
Yeah.
process is so rigorous. So I think
Yeah.
that can be a problem.
But it's exactly, it's funny when you were saying that about process. I think it's not an either or, right? It's
Yeah.
where you start and what you're leading with. And I remember I had this boss that once said, no company has ever operated themselves to greatness,
Yeah, I love that.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, it doesn't mean that operations are not important. They're critically important. Otherwise, it's literally a free for all, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's where you start. It's what you lead with, to your point. Like, you've got to have to start with that belief. And, it connects, as I talk about this ad nauseum because I'm a one-trick pony. But this idea that I talk around, this idea of heart, head, and hands, right? Is that
Mhm.
people have to feel before they think,
Yep.
before they do.
Yep.
And belief drives strategy, and strategy drives structure, and structure drives action, and actions drive execution. And
Yep.
so you've got to, as you said, you've got to start at the right altitude and the right place to help humans go through the journey of getting to commitment.
Yep.
But when you start at the bottom, which a lot of organizations you and I have seen do, right? You end up just debating tactics and
Yep.
processes and budgets and approvals and timelines. And those are where people start to get stuck, right? On the kind of it's not the beginning of the story. It's part of the story, but it's not the beginning of the story. And if people don't actually align as you said, align on the beginning of the story, then everyone comes to those conversations with different beliefs.
Yeah.
So,
I would argue it's not the moral of the story too, right? Like, it's
right.
not the whole point of the story. Like, and if you get too wrapped up in just do this, you lose
Yes.
complete sight of that.
100%. And so instead of debating all the tactics, we should be actually aligning around, what do we believe? What
Yeah.
do we all think is the reason we're here, and why we do what we do, and what we're trying to solve for in our North Star, so that the tactics and the process can support our ability to get there. And so, if people don't believe something matters, then they never fully commit to making it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, what happens if you ignore it?
I mean, nothing, right? I mean, I think, the costs show up everywhere, right? Like, innovation slows down. You said it earlier, initiative disappears. People aren't doing more. They're not coming up with ideas. They're not rewriting a playbook with a better perspective because they have institutional knowledge that someone else didn't have.
Yep.
And this is super important, and you've seen this and I have seen this. Talent leaves.
Yep.
Right? Because
Yep.
if we were talking highest common denominator, which we'll use as commitment for this conversation, versus lowest common denominator, if you're at lowest common denominator, the people who are the best and want to do more are like frustrated. So why should I be here? And you're
Yep.
allowing people who should never be there to stay, because
Yep.
you're checklisting them to death, and they can pass by. They have the answers to the test, right? So, leaders then become frustrated and they feel like they're just pushing everything uphill. And so we know this, but I love a good statistic, right? So Gallup, the research, the research has repeatedly shown that engaged teams outperform disengaged teams on outcomes ranging from productivity and customer loyalty to profitability and retention, right? So
Right.
you and I might think blinding flash of the obvious, but for the people that really want hard data, you can go and find it everywhere.
Right.
That engaged teams, committed teams outperform disengaged teams like, crazily. So
Yep.
when commitment is missing, organizations spend an enormous amount of energy creating systems to compensate for more rules, more oversight, more reporting, more approvals. Like it just becomes a self-fulfilling crazy prophecy of more, which creates less around the actual results part, right? Because people come,
Right.
as you said earlier, it becomes bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I mean, and we've both seen all that happen all the time. And the problem with that is that kind of, not only does it force compliance, it forces such structure and such rigidity that actually becomes fragile, because the minute circumstances change, everything falls apart.
Yeah.
And everything's going to stop because now people don't know what to do. The circumstances have changed, so now you've built this very compliant culture, and people are just going to wait for instructions now. What are they going to do now? And you know what else they're going to start doing? Second guessing everything.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
And so, which happens all the time, and then, by the way, everyone's out there, leadership are just a bunch of idiots. I'm just going to sit here and wait till they tell me what to do. But committed teams don't do that. They don't wait. Now they understand the big purpose of North Star, the mission. So what do? They start adapting, instead of second guessing and questioning what they do, they figure out how to move forward. Okay, well, situation changed. What are we going to do to solve it? Let's go. Let's figure it out.
Yes.
Because they're focused and connected to the outcome, and they're connected to the mission and the moral of the story, not just the process. So they're able to adapt and grow. And that's a massive difference, massive.
Huge. I don't think we can underestimate I don't think we can underestimate the power of what you just said about that idea of people that just start to they start to poke holes in everything.
Yeah.
Like you said, they are operating at the level of the task, the tact, or the approach. And like you said, they're not understanding yes, that may not be the right way to do it, but we're actually trying to solve for this. So if you have a better way, suggest it. Right? Versus I just like that. Well, okay, this doesn't really, but it happens all the time. And I think we sometimes mistake that employees are difficult or not connected or not committed when actually they're frustrated because they don't understand why we're doing what we're doing. So sometimes it's not that the employees are compliant. Sometimes it goes back to your isolationist conversation at the beginning.
Yeah.
We haven't shared with them the why. They're not part of the process, and therefore they are forced to engage at a level that they're like, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Right. I'm following the procedure. It's clearly not working, but step 12 tells I've got to do this, and then I'm going to do step 13 and 14.
Who came up with step 12, for God's sakes?
Yeah, what an idiot.
What an idiot. His name is Matt Mark. Okay.
No.
I would never put your name in that. I wasn't going to throw you into that.
I appreciate that.
You were 1 through 11. I just added 12.
Oh, well. Yeah, those were good ideas. But
All right. So then let's actually give the people what they want, which is some 3 things they can do immediately. So you and I kind of thought about some things, so we're going to kind of share those. So first, I'll go first.
Yep.
Connect work to purpose. We literally were just talking about this, right?
Yes.
Don't just tell people what to do. Explain why it matters. Because as we've said, people don't commit to tasks, they commit to meaning.
Yes, absolutely.
That's number 1.
Yes. Number 2, involve people early. Get representative involvement in there early. And before you finalize all your plans, your strategies, whatever, ask for input. Particularly as you get input from people who are closer to the work or the implementation, because you'll get better ideas and you'll get stronger ownership.
Yeah. And that leads to what we just were talking about around, as you said, you used the word ownership. So create ownership instead of dependency, right? Ask questions like, what would you recommend? What are we missing? Because the goal isn't to create followers, it's to create contributors.
Yes, love that. Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and you know what? Don't just bring in advocates. Invite the detractors in early.
This is such a Kevinism. I love this. Bring in the people that will tell you what's wrong. It's so true.
Well, I mean, it's like AI now. It's like all you know the word I'm looking for. Why can't I say it? Sycophantic, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
sycophant. Yeah,
It's always telling you, "Oh, I love that idea. That's great." That doesn't often solve the real problem. So bring the people in. They're going to tell you this sucks, because a lot of times they're going to either give you better ideas or they're going to help you understand that you're not explaining it right. They might ultimately agree with what you're trying to do, but the way you're saying it isn't working. So the detractors can really help.
Yes.
And by the way, often when you turn a detractor into an advocate, they are like the best advocates.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I think also in that process of trying to sort of validate things, there's techniques you can use. One of my favorites is a pre-mortem. A lot of times companies do the post-mortem, right? Like something's gone wrong and you go back and try to analyze it. But you can take that same mindset and say, okay, let's have a pre-mortem. We're going to imagine it went horribly wrong. Why did it go horribly wrong? When you put yourself in that mindset, you start to see other things. Or my friend Amber Taylor has this concept called a proposal to hate that I love. Where she'll take like basically a rough version of an idea and put it in front of people and be like, just, hey, look, this is where I'm starting with. I know it's not good. I'm not precious about it. Tell me why it sucks. Like actually invite people to tell her that. Again, it just strengthens things for you. So you find the problems better. You identify them early so you can solve them before you get it out there.
Yeah.
Because really the goal is to validate your plans before you implement them more broadly.
And the reality is, bringing it back to commitment versus compliance.
Yeah.
The more you actually bring people in to what we were talking about, the more you get them a voice or a place in the process, the more co-creation, to use a word that you use a lot, that you actually have, the more likely you are to have employees that have skin in the game.
Yeah.
Because they become part of it. It becomes part of them. They have a vested interest in the success of whatever that strategy, that vision is.
Yep.
And when you ask people to critique it or to the proposal to hate, asking people's opinion is the best way to get them to, wait, you actually want my opinion?
Yeah, right.
Right. And there's also an interesting stat that when we talk about things like this, people don't actually care if their idea is adopted. What they care about is being heard.
Yeah. There's a principle for that. It's called procedural justice. It's a psychological thing, and that's what it is. As long as they feel like as long as we feel like our opinions were actually considered, then we can get behind the result, even if it's different than what we were suggesting. And that's a real psychological thing. Procedural justice.
So bringing people into the process does not mean you create that free-for-all or you lose control. You actually create a collective control because you are able to mine the intelligence of the Borg, so to speak, and get people on board, which is super important.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's a question we should leave listeners with for this week.
All right.
So for those of you thinking about, do I have a committed a culture? Do I have a compliant culture?
I'm thinking about that right now.
I know, right? How confident are you that every member of your team is as invested in the vision and strategy as you are when you're not in the room?
Yeah.
It's one thing, as you said, the nodding heads. But if you leave that room, how confident are you that they will take whatever that vision and strategy is and really just go to town?
Yeah.
And if the answer isn't 100%, then you may have some work to do of turning your culture from a compliance-driven one into a committed one. So something to think about.
That's a powerful question. I mean, I love that. And it's hard, by the way. It's not an easy thing to do, but boy, does it pay off.
No, it totally pays off.
I love it.
Yeah.
So Matt, we've come to that part of the discussion where we've been there and done that, but what are we still learning? I learned something cool this week. I want to tell you about it.
I want to hear it. Because this will be something that I will learn on top of what I learned last week.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Oh, no, will be. I guarantee it.
This is the crazy. So you know, you've seen railroad tracks, subway
Yes.
tracks everywhere, right?
Now I'm actually nervous where this is going, but go
Oh
ahead.
no, well, yeah. Um, underneath every railroad track ever, you kind of knew it instinctively, but I never paid attention, are a bunch of rocks. And I never really knew why that was, but I saw this TikTok video that kind of explained it. It's super interesting. Underneath the railroad track, lots of rocks, jagged rocks are there. And the railroad tracks are not actually tied down. They're actually just sitting on this bed of rocks everywhere. And the reason for that is a couple-fold. The rocks, first of all, absorb all the energy of the weight of that train so that it stabilizes the tracks. And secondly, water will kind of come through those rocks and spread out so you don't get soggy ground underneath the tracks, and that also makes the tracks fall. And that was like a technique that was built in the 1800s with railroad tracks, and it's still being used today because it still works. And I just think that was super fascinating, and it even is like a little bit relevant to our discussion today. Like you set things up, and the rocks all have a purpose, and they understand what it's all for, kind of thing. And they build this stability throughout. Railroad tracks everywhere around the world use these rocks, and these jagged rocks that are, work all together in harmony to make the train go. So that is what I learned this week.
love
I was
that.
kind of fascinated by it.
But isn't that amazing? Like that quote unquote like, technology might be a very big word for that, but
Yeah,
it perfectly does what it needs to do.
yeah, exactly.
Very thoughtful and intentional. And as you said, like it's got a purpose to it. I love
Yeah,
that. All right.
yeah, interesting. What did you
I
learn?
will never look at railroad tracks the same way again.
Exactly, me neither.
Yeah. Okay, so mine this week is a little bit of a reminder, and I think sometimes the idea of learning something is either relearning it or reinforcing it or being like, right, that still holds up. Kind of like your railroad tracks. The idea still holds up, whatever, hundreds of years later,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. There you go.
So my poor father again. I feel like this is a poor man. I drag him around to restaurants and doctors' offices. Those are my two options for him. So last week I was taking my dad. He had 3 doctor's appointments, 2 that were scheduled, and 1 that was kind of that someone fit us in because of some stuff that was happening with him. But anyway, long story short, he went to the first doctor's appointment. It was at 9 a.m. And this doctor, gastroenterologist, surgeon. Anyway, 9 o'clock is the appointment. Door opens at 9 o'clock. Mr. Marcotte, please come in. Now, this is the 3rd time we've seen him. Every single time we go, they're on time. And you and I both know doctors' offices in general, it's like the DMV. You got to spend your money.
Right.
And I've said to them in the past, I said it again this time, I said, I have to tell you, it's so refreshing and so actually fun to come here because I know we're going to get in and out. And the surgeon was like, our focus is we don't want our patients to have to wait and create more frustration for them. There are already a lot going on. So we work really hard to put these systems in place so we're on time. And like I said, every time, the 3 times we've been there, they've been on time, right? Number one. So then the second one we went to was at 11:30, and this is the one they had to fit in. So first of all, they weren't even supposed to see my father, but it was his primary care physician. They fit him in. So we get in there. It's 11:30 appointment. 11:30 the door opens. Mr. Marcotte, come in. He comes in. They take the test. The doctor comes in. Spends a lot of time with my dad. Didn't rush. Didn't make it feel like clearly we fit you in. I have 60 other things to do.
Yeah.
What great experience. You would do, but once again on time, and also made him feel like he wasn't intruding on or shouldn't be there. Then we go 3:15 to his ophthalmologist, who I dread going to because it's always the exact opposite. And sure enough, again, 3:15 appointment. We didn't see the ophthalmologist till 4:50 p.m.
Oh God. Yeah.
And every time we go, it's the same. It's always an hour and a half to 2 hours late. And you go up and ask, and they literally look at you like you have 5 heads. How dare you be asking us why it's taking so long? The doctor comes in the office, clearly not interested in how we feel or the fact that she's been waiting, doesn't acknowledge it, doesn't do anything, spends 5 minutes with my father, and then walks out. So the point of this is not to bitch about the ophthalmologist, although not my favorite person, right? But this is the learning that, like, I had a boss that said years and years and years ago, if you see it, it can be. And so these are 3 doctors, different specialties, but all doctors, all busy, all lots of patients. 2 of them could figure out how to create a customer experience. and one of them seemingly didn't care. And the for me, the actual learning is more this, which is every system is perfectly designed to get the results it does. And so that to me is the kind of thing I learned, which was really important, that whatever result I'm getting, whatever's happening is the result of a system that's in place. And if you don't like the result, you have to look at the system, right?
Matt, I'd like to just close out by saying that I am committed to doing this with you.
Oh my God,
Successfully.
are we having a commitment ceremony right now?
We are a little bit, yeah.
I won't tell your wife and I won't tell my husband.
All right, deal. It's our little thing.
It's our little secret, although now it's on video. But
Well, yeah.
that's all right. That's right. Well, Kevin, I am also committed. So thank you for being my commitment partner. And thanks everyone for joining us today on Been There, Done That, and Still Learning. Until next time, stay real, stay committed.
All right, I love it.
I've been there, done that. Yeah. I've been there, done that. Yeah. I've been there, done that. And still